In a small village tucked between the rolling hills and dense forests of West Africa, life moved to the rhythm of the earth. The mornings were painted in shades of amber and gold as the sun spilled over mud brick houses, and the air carried the scent of smoky fires and wet earth after dawn's first rain. Here, every sound, every whisper of the wind seemed alive, filled with secrets known only to those who listened. This village, called Olunji, was home to a proud community of farmers, traders, and storytellers. They were people who understood the language of the land. They could read the patterns of the clouds, the way birds flew before the rains, and the subtle trembling of leaves that foretold danger. Children ran barefoot along narrow dirt paths, their laughter mingling with the crowing of roosters and the bleating of goats. Women carried woven baskets on their heads, balancing them with effortless grace, while men tended to yam fields and cassava gardens, humming songs that had been passed down through generations. Among them lived a boy named Iikenta, 10 years old with eyes wide and curious, always chasing the edges of the world. He was mischievous, yet thoughtful, and he carried in him a restless energy, a hunger to see what lay beyond the familiar. His family was humble but loving. His mother, Goy, a stern but caring woman, spent her days cooking, cleaning, and ensuring the household ran smoothly. His father, Oina, a quiet man with deep-set eyes, worked in the fields, always alert, always protective. Despite their modest life, the family was content, bound together by routines, small joys, and a shared reverence for the old stories that shaped their understanding of right, wrong, and the unseen forces that moved through the village. Iikenta's days were filled with playful adventures. He would run barefoot through the dusty streets, sketching swords and shields in the sand, imagining himself a great warrior defending his people from invisible enemies. His laughter was infectious, his imagination boundless. And yet, even in those carefree moments, there was an awareness in the village that some things were beyond the ordinary, things that could not be explained by the sun or the wind, by human effort or skill. Small signs would appear, a sudden chill when the air should have been warm, shadows that seemed to move on their own, or a glimmer of light where no lantern had been placed. The village itself seemed to hum with quiet anticipation, though no one could say why. The elders muttered of forgotten stories, of objects that carried more than beauty, of spirits that waited for the unwise, of fates that could shift with a single choice. Yet these were only whispers to the children, tales half heard while the adults went about their days, tending crops, mending roofs, or carrying water from the river. To Iikenta, the village was a place of comfort, a canvas for adventure, and a stage for imagination. It was on one ordinary afternoon, under a sun that seemed unusually bright, that the first strange ripple began. The kind of ripple that seemed small at first, almost negligible, but that grew with every passing moment. The air carried a strange hush, and though the villagers went about their routines, there was a subtle tension, as if the world itself had shifted its gaze. The birds were quieter, the wind had slowed. Even the children's laughter felt muted, fading into a strange undercurrent of anticipation. In this serene village where life followed familiar patterns, the ordinary was about to be interrupted by something extraordinary, something that would challenge the boundaries of what the villagers understood as reality. And at the center of this unfolding mystery was a boy whose innocence made him both vulnerable and vital. A boy whose curiosity would lead him to an encounter with forces older than the village itself.
No one knew that a single, seemingly insignificant discovery, a small object lying unnoticed along the dusty path, would awaken hidden powers, reshape lives, and cast a shadow over the familiar warmth of Olunji. The villagers would soon learn that some treasures are never harmless, that even the simplest of actions can carry consequences far beyond the eye. And while the sun still shone over the mud brick homes, a subtle unease began to creep through the village. It was as though the earth itself had inhaled sharply, preparing for what was coming. For in the world of Olunji, the line between the visible and the unseen, the mundane and the supernatural, was thinner than anyone could imagine. And soon, that line would be crossed. And while the sun still shone over the mud-brick homes, a subtle unease began to creep through the village. It was as though the earth itself had inhaled sharply, preparing for what was coming. For in the world of Olunji, the line between the visible and the unseen, the mundane and the supernatural, was thinner than anyone could imagine. And soon, that line would be crossed. As the sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows across the small home, Iikenta finally removed the ring from his finger. A soft hum seemed to echo from it, as though the ring itself were breathing. The golden band glowed faintly, etched symbols shimmering with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. His parents, Goy and Ina, froze, their eyes wide with shock and fear, mouths slightly parted as they stared at the object their son had unwittingly brought into their lives. The room felt alive with tension, the air thick, heavy with the scent of wood smoke and the faint metallic tang of the ring's power. Every shadow in the room seemed to shift, stretching unnaturally, dancing across the mud walls. Iikenta's hands trembled, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him as he realized that what he held was far more than a simple trinket. It was a key to something ancient, something that had been waiting quietly in the earth for someone curious enough to find it. The glow from the ring reflected in his wide eyes, flickering with fear, awe, and the first faint understanding of the immense consequences of his discovery. Moments later, the creak of the wooden door announced the arrival of Inspector Chinedu. The older man, with weathered features and a sharp, analytical gaze, approached cautiously, examining the ring as if it were both precious and dangerous. The carved symbols seemed to respond to his scrutiny, pulsing faintly, sending tiny ripples of light across the walls. Iikenta stood behind his parents, clutching his hands together, his small body tense yet alert. Goy and Ina exchanged glances filled with relief, tempered by lingering fear, relief that their son was safe, fear at the implications of the ring's hidden power. Inspector Chinedu's voice was low and deliberate as he explained the ancient origins of the ring, telling tales of forgotten powers and the warnings embedded in its carvings. The family listened in rapt silence, the room bathed in flickering lamplight that made every movement feel monumental, every shadow a messenger of the supernatural. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, as if the forest itself leaned. Later that evening, after the inspector had departed, the small family gathered in the dimly lit room, the ring now resting safely in Iikenta's palm. He held it tightly, feeling its warmth and the faint pulse that still lingered, a reminder of the power it contained. Goy sat close, her hands folded, her expression a mixture of weariness, relief, and maternal concern, while Ina rested a steady hand on his son's shoulder, grounding him with silent reassurance. The room was quiet save for the soft crackle of the fire and the occasional creak of the house settling. Shadows danced gently on the walls, no longer menacing, but carrying the weight of the day's revelations. Iikenta's eyes, once wide with innocent curiosity, now reflected deeper understanding and contemplation. He realized that even a small action, a simple choice, could ripple outward, shaping destinies and altering realities. And in the following morning, Olunji awoke bathed in golden sunlight, mist curling gently above the river, children's laughter echoing through the narrow streets once more. Women moved gracefully along the paths, carrying baskets brimming with produce, while men returned to their fields with quiet determination, their work harmonizing with the rhythm of the land. The village appeared unchanged at first glance, but those who paused noticed subtle signs. The air felt lighter, more vibrant, as if the village itself had exhaled a long-held breath. Iikenta stood on the edge of the path, watching, alert yet smiling, aware of the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. The memory of the ring's strange power lingered like a soft echo in the breeze, a reminder of the day when the ordinary collided with the extraordinary. Shadows played gently across mud walls, sunlight glinting on distant rooftops, carrying the quiet reassurance that life, though fragile, could be restored, and that lessons had been learned without breaking the spell. The following morning, Olunji awoke bathed in golden sunlight, mist curling gently above the river, children's laughter echoing through the narrow streets once more. Women moved gracefully along the paths, carrying baskets brimming with produce, while men returned to their fields with quiet determination, their work harmonizing with the rhythm of the land. The village appeared unchanged at first glance, but those who paused noticed subtle signs. The air felt lighter, more vibrant, as if the village itself had exhaled a long-held breath. Iikenta stood on the edge of the path, watching, alert yet smiling, aware of the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. The memory of the ring's strange power lingered like a soft echo in the breeze, a reminder of the day when the ordinary collided with the extraordinary. Shadows played gently across mud walls, sunlight glinting on distant